In this video, I am going to introduce the research on microscale self-assembly conducted at the Nanobio Modeling Lab, Faculty of Science and Engineering, Chuo University. Man-made objects such as industrial products are assembled by human hands or industrial robots. However, many things in nature have quite complex shapes and functions, but they are assembled spontaneously without the help of human hands. For example, snowflakes come in a variety of shapes, but they are all made up of only hydrogen bonds between very simple water molecules. The final shapes of snowflakes depend on the environmental factors such as humidity and temperature. DNA, the blueprint of life, uses the sequence of 4 types of bases, A, T, G, and C as a template to control the binding of the double helix. Furthermore, inside cells, long DNA is wound around a protein and forms an ordered structure. Then, macroscopic structures such as cells, tissues, organs, and our bodies are assembled through self-organization. Since around 2000, in order to apply this principle to industry, there has been a lot of research into assembling small micro and millimeter components together. In the early days, sheets cut into a certain shape were placed on the water surface to investigate how they would assemble using surface tension similar to water striders. It was also studied how three-dimensional crystal-like structures are assembled by adding adhesive properties to 3D components. The most practical example is a technology that uses low melting point solder as an adhesive to automatically place electronic elements on a substrate. In this example, they demonstrated that it is possible to manufacture a light-emitting circuits by arranging LED elements in an orderly manner on a flexible substrate. In order to assemble components by self-assembly, components must have adhesive properties and be able to recognize the correct location. However, precise application of adhesive materials is often difficult, which increases the cost. We tested if the excluded volume effect could be used as a way to bind components without adhesives. Excluded volume effect is a phenomenon that occurs when a large number of small particles or molecules exist around relatively large particles as components. Because the surrounding small particles also have a finite size, their center of gravity cannot approach to larger particles beyond their own radius. Therefore, small particles are excluded from the immediate vicinity of large particles. This region is called the excluded volume. When large particles come into contact, this excluded volume overlaps, reducing the total amount of this volume in the system. This relatively increases the space where small particles can move and juggle around via Brownian motion. As a result, association of large particles is favored in terms of entropy. In this way, even though there is no chemical bonding, association of particles occurs due to the effect of molecular arrangement called entropy. This effect is actually taking place for bonds between biomolecules within cells. We tested this effect to actually occur. When polystyrene beads with a diameter of 3 microns are put in water, they are dispersed like this. However, when a polymer with a diameter of several tens of nanometers is mixed into the solution, the beads actually contacted with each other. Using this principle, we showed that microbeads can be placed in microfabricated grooves. Beads could be placed both on a 2-dimensional plane and on the surfaces of 3-dimensional structures. Next, we microfabricated both the components to be placed and the substrate to which the components are placed. We showed that the assembly of these components was successful with a fairly high probability. Now, this is self-assembly using adhesive, and this research aims to assemble parts in specific locations by applying adhesive in specific patterns. In this example, the adhesive patterns were made on the red part on components. By changing the size and number of circles on each component, we tested if we could assemble only components having the same patterns. By introducing sets of components with different adhesive patterns into a beaker and stirring them with a propeller mixer, it was shown to be possible to selectively bond the same components together, even when 2 or 3 types of components were mixed together. We then demonstrated that functional components could be selectively assembled using similar adhesive patterns. Many electronic devices such as LEDs have specific wiring directions. In this work, we created a resin component with an embedded LED and applied a pattern of low melting point solder. When these components were placed in hot water and stirred, they were placed in the correct orientation and bonded to the circuit board. As mounted correctly, the LEDs lit up successfully. Next, we tested if the actuating components can be self-assembled. We created components with a temperature-responsive gel and attached sheets with a solder pattern to both sides of them. Similarly, when stirred in hot water, only specific actuator components bonded together, and deformation was confirmed by changing the temperature. If self-assembly manufacturing can be applied to functional parts, it will be useful for producing devices that integrate different materials. Finally, we introduce our attempts realizing self-assembly using eco-friendly adhesive mechanisms learned from nature. Insects called leaf beetles can walk underwater. In this video, a leaf beetle captured by a student was immersed in water and was made to walk on the bottom of a beaker. The sole of the foot of the leaf beetle has a hair-like microstructures, which holds air and achieves underwater adhesion. We tried to apply this principle to self-assembly. Arrays of micropillar structures were created using silicone rubber, and zinc oxide with a nanoneedle structure was mixed to further improve air retention. When these components were immersed in water, air was retained in the pillar array structure, and underwater adhesion was also confirmed. When the pillar array structure was patterned and stirred in water, components with the same patterns were observed to selectively bond together, similar to previous experiments using adhesives. We can expect the development of environmentally friendly micro-component assembly systems using biomimetics. Thank you for watching the research introduction of the Nanobio Modeling Lab, Faculty of Science and Engineering, Chuo University. If you are interested, please join us in research and enjoy science and engineering together.